a horse in an elevator, 3 thieves caught in the act, or a not-so-good driver. Sit back and relax. Today we're going to show you 10 people who didn't know they were being filmed. Dogs are man's best friend. They are loyal, friendly, and great company. But what we often forget is that these animals are especially extremely intelligent. A characteristic that did not escape the owner of these 2 magnificent husky, who decided to make of his 2 wolf descendants free and devoted household employees. It is thus after several months of relentless training, during which the only words of order were discipline and obedience, that our amateur dog handler judged that one of these 2 best canine friends was ready. That's how he wanted to test him. And as you can see, his mission was to retrieve a bag of food that his owner had ordered. At first, this experiment was a great success. The husky reacted as would an exemplary household employee. He opened the door to the delivery man and then retrieved the order. Unfortunately, this is where things went wrong. Instead of paying the delivery man, he vigorously and casually slammed the door in his face, using one of his back legs. And all this under the disappointed look of his master, who has for months replayed the same scene with his dog. However, the husky's owner decided to see the glass as half full rather than half empty. And even if his dreams of having a free and dedicated housekeeper fell through and he had to apologize to the delivery man, he was still proud of his canine companion and his own training skills. Taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions is a great sign of responsibility. Unfortunately, there are some people who prefer to justify themselves awkwardly instead of acting like adults. This is precisely the case of this Israeli man in a red sweater who, in order to visit a friend in a luxury apartment in Tel Aviv, decided to take his horse with him, as if it were a dog or a pet cat. So, as if nothing had happened, he entered the lobby of the building before getting into the elevator with his stallion on a leash, without thinking once about the consequences of this stupid act, which could have damaged the elevator and put his life, that of his horse, and all the inhabitants of the building in danger. If this foolish man was able to get into the elevator, it is because he was also able to visit his friend in his apartment. Unfortunately, we don't know more about how this visit went or the logistics of how he got such a large horse into an apartment. What we do know is that his absurd act did not go unpunished. After this surveillance video leaked on the internet, the authorities were alerted. This led this man directly to prison for endangering others and animal abuse. However, even in court, this irresponsible horseman did not think it was time to grow up and assume his actions, and he continued to justify himself by saying that it was not written anywhere in the building that horses were forbidden. Still, after the long stay in prison, he will have plenty of time to grow up. You certainly know that feeling of embarrassment and shame when you fall in front of a crowd or slip while walking serenely in the street. Faced with this embarrassment, even though it can be very painful, we tend to make fun of the moment. However, there is a much simpler solution to not feel this shame. Just pretend that nothing, but absolutely nothing happened. Like this lady who is a genius in this matter. As you can see at the beginning of this clip, this lady, with a few extra pounds, wanted nothing more than to sit at the counter of this restaurant. So she decided to sit on the stool, even though it didn't seem to fit her body type at all. It is thus confident that she gets ready to sit down, and whereas she had not yet put the totality of her weight on this chair, that this one fell in pieces. This hilarious scene for us watching it must have been extremely embarrassing for the woman who experienced it, but instead of laughing it off to divert attention like we all would, she decided to just casually look away and pretend it never happened. And it wasn't until the employee bent down to pick up what was left of the late stool that she took a quick sneak peek at the poor seat that was now in a million pieces, before resuming her casual posture in front of what appeared to be the bulletin board of a menu. After all, a broken chair wasn't going to spoil her appetite. Nothing is impossible in life with a little ingenuity and perseverance. The proof is in the pudding with this young woman, who also wanted to lie down in a hammock and enjoy the shade and the soft sound of the waves crashing against those concrete beams while she took a nap. However, to finally enjoy this long-awaited moment of relaxation, she had to brave the impossible. Indeed, as you can see, this hammock is hung way too high, but that wasn't going to stop this young woman who doesn't lack ingenuity. And while the average person would have given up, she vigorously grabbed the edges of the hammock and in an acrobatic move worthy of the greatest athletes, she slipped her foot into the back end of the canvas before finally lying down in her hammock thanks to an amazing pirouette. Sure, this young lady had to try a few times before her technique worked, but by persisting like this, she finally got what she wanted and more. Her moment of relaxation was all the more enjoyable because it was well-deserved. Sometimes, all you have to do is ask and you get served, and these 3 British women learned that the hard way. Indeed, after having raised the elbow a little more than reason, they had the very bad idea to break in their new neighbor. So they went out in the middle of the night, drunk, without shoes for 2 of them, and with a robe for the 3rd. And as if that wasn't ridiculous enough, they broke into their neighbor's garden to steal an old oven that doesn't seem to work. But no sooner had they set foot on the neighbor's property than the surveillance camera went off and the lights came on. Except they didn't pay any attention and continued their break-in until the owner spoke to them through the camera speakers to tell them that they could use the house without hiding. This scared them more than anything else. They dropped the oven and left in a hurry. But 5 minutes later, one of them came back, proudly displayed her naked backside in front of the camera before calling her accomplices, who this time entered on 4 legs. And once again, the owner spoke to them from the camera to explain that he wanted to get rid of the oven anyway. So, as if nothing had happened, they got the oven back and thanked the kind neighbor. However, the next day when the effects of the alcohol wore off, they finally realized what they had done the day before and were very embarrassed. But this embarrassment did not disappear for all that the following days because the video of their nightly adventures found itself on the net and it became viral. And since then, their shame is indelible. Before getting a driver's license, you must at least be able to park your car, which is absolutely not the case of the driver of this red car. Indeed, while trying to park her car in this parking lot, she had all the trouble in the world. And even if the passenger came out to guide her, after several disastrous attempts, nothing happened. Her car was still not parked. So she went out and tried, with the help of her friend and a security guard, to lift the car to introduce it thanks to the strength of their arms in the parking space, a ridiculous attempt that ended in a bitter failure. And it is only after 7 minutes of desperate attempts that finally a driver, who certainly deserved his license, took the wheel to finally park the car in 2-3 maneuvers, under the amazed look of this poor driver. Unfortunately, this young woman was not at the end of her troubles, since the video of her hilarious parking was published on the internet, which made her the laughingstock of the whole world. These 3 rhinos, their names are Rihanna, Karen Pelez, and Carnabella. They live at the Ramat Gan Safari, a zoo in the outskirts of Tel Aviv, and they always wanted to enjoy the sweet taste of freedom. And while their dreams seemed impossible, one day in January 2015, the security guard on duty took a nap while on duty, leaving the door to their enclosure open. A godsend for the 3 rhinos who rushed to escape. And just as they were finally free, the guard woke up with a start and chased them all over the park before other colleagues joined him and drove the 3 adventurous rhinos back to their enclosure. The freedom of this group of pachyderms was short-lived, but at least they, unlike their fellow zoo animals, know what it feels like to be free, if only for a short time. However, from now on, they can't count on the sleeping guard for their next escapades because he has been fired. Now here's a hilarious sequence that shows a woman who wanted nothing more than to leave that elevator she thought she was trapped in. In fact, every time she pressed the opening button and expected the door opposite to open, it was in fact the door behind her that opened, without her paying any attention. So much so that she started drumming and screaming for help, when all she had to do was turn around to see that there was nothing holding her inside that damn elevator. And it was only minutes later that she was spotted on another surveillance camera running down a staircase. We will never know how she finally managed to leave the elevator, but what is sure is that she lived a real trauma, which in the end is not very dramatic because by avoiding elevators and taking stairs systematically, she is sure to always keep the form. After the 3 British oven thieves, here is the Tom Cruise of the Australian burglars, who to steal the equivalent of 127 euros of merchandise, put himself in the shoes of the agent Ethan Hunt of Mission Impossible. Dressed in black from head to toe and in a jump from the roof followed by a spectacular landing, this bandit broke into the hardware store. He then quickly retrieved the power tools he had come for before attempting to leave as a spy would by hoisting himself onto the shelves with a garden hose. Unfortunately, it didn't work and he fell to the ground. But being a great athlete, he quickly got back on his feet and left the store from an emergency rear exit, taking his power tools with him, of course. And to top it all off, despite the release of this video surveillance by the local police, he still hasn't been arrested, but we all know that he will eventually pay. As much as you had sympathy for the Australian thief who went to so much trouble for an almost insignificant loot, this young woman will disgust you to the core. After being refused access to this McDonald's restaurant by the security guard, following her antisocial behavior, this young blonde woman in a black crop top and miniskirt forced her way into the restaurant and did not hesitate to insult the security guard and spit in his face twice before leaving. An abject and scandalous behavior which will certainly be very heavily sanctioned by the justice. It was 10 people who did not know they were being filmed. Tell us in the comments which one surprised you the most. And if you like this video, don't forget to put a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all the notifications and not miss anything of our next contents.